So in this video, we're going to concern ourselves with a actual real chemical hygiene plan. Go figure. And this one I have pulled from Cornell University. And the reason is because I want to compare Cape Fear's chemical hygiene plan to Cornell University's chemical hygiene plan. And I want to show you the differences between them. Okay? Now, employer chemical hygiene plans could also be available. And the reason that I've not pulled an actual employer chemical hygiene plan is because these are typically kind of site-based. They don't really want to expose this information out to the public, depending on the type of laboratory that they have. So therefore, it's easily available on site through their intranet or throughout like a computer-based server that they might have at their location. Sometimes it's very hard for me to pull up a chemical hygiene plan of an actual company. However, academic institutions typically do not have to worry about any of these regulations or any of the kind of leaked information that might happen in a chemical hygiene plan. It's all academic based. It's made easily available to public. So therefore, I can just go to Google and I can type in chemical hygiene plan Cornell, and I will be able to find this without a problem at all. Okay, so that's why we're going to look at an academic institution chemical hygiene plan. An employer would be very similar. There's hardly any difference at all in them. Okay, so up here on the screen, here you'll see Cornell University up here at the very top. And then over here to the side, you're going to see the 16 breakdowns, right? So everything from introduction, PPE, emergency prep, safe chemical use, how to get rid of it, anything that's very specific or particular, and then a series of appendices down here at the very end. So these are maybe some hazardous chemicals that they use very often, and because of that, they have specific appendixes devoted to just that particular chemical, and that's it. All right, so again, it can be as detailed as it wants to be or as lean as it needs to be. It's up to that institution to make that determination. Okay, so the way that Cornell has done it, it's very easy for me to find, so I should not be in violation of any of that, right? I mean, as an employee of Cornell, I could easily go to the internet, type in chemical hygiene plan Cornell. It's the first link that shows up, so I'll be able to access it very easily. Again, if you're working at an institution or an employer that you can't do that with, or you don't know where to find it, then you could be in violations of some of their regulations, and you need to maybe make that suggestion to your employer. Chapter 1 says Introduction, and under the Introduction section, it looks like the Chemical Hygiene Plan Accessibility, the laboratory safety responsibilities, and that include the responsibilities of the EHS, the CHO, deans, directors, and department chairs, principal investigators, faculty and lab supervisors, lab employees, building coordinators, and department safety representatives. So if I click on this link, I should be able to read in more detail all of what they would call an introduction. Okay, so here's the introduction, and it gives me a very detailed description of everything that's out there. And not only that, but their chemical hygiene plan will have links that will go to the appendix of the documents as needed. It will also give me links to outside resources that these regulations will fall under. There's quite a bit of detailed information under here. So whoever is in control of this chemical hygiene plan has really made a full-bodied, interactive chemical hygiene plan for them, right? And this is something that's very pleasing. You know, it's a lot of detail and it's a lot of work, but it's also very convenient. Not only convenient for the employees of Cornell, but also convenient to outside regulatory agencies that want to look at their chemical hygiene plan. Very easy to read, it's very structured, it's very streamlined, everything is there. Chemical hygiene officer right here, we've talked about that. The role of the chemical hygiene officer is to facilitate the implementation of the campus chemical hygiene plan. And this laboratory safety manual in laboratories across campus and outlying facilities, and to serve as a technical resource to the campus laboratory community. The associate CHO will act in the absence of the CHO. The names of the current CHO and associate CHOs can be found in subject matter expert. So I'm going to click subject matter expert and look, here we go. So it basically gives me a whole list of people's names. It gives me their telephone numbers. It also gives me the secondary contacts if I can't get a hold of the first contacts, and their phone numbers. Notice it also will give me email links if I need to. But look, if I'm working and let's say I am in a chemical laboratory and I want to know how to get rid of some of the hazardous waste, look, this sheet tells me. Here I've got chemical waste right there. I need to contact Andrew Murphy, and here's the phone number. And if I can't get a hold of him, I'm going to contact Derek Franklin, and that's his phone number. How easy can it be? Very straightforward, right? It's all interactive. I can do this by the internet within a matter of seconds. The major duties of the chemical hygiene officer are, so here are their duties. Notice these duties are very similar to what we had in our PowerPoint in a previous video, right? Very similar kind of objectives that we're finding here with our CHOs. 1.2.3, deans and directors and department chairpersons. I told you that sometimes these people are responsible. And here we see them directly singled out. They are kind of required to oversee some of this stuff. The deans, directors, and department chairpersons are responsible for lab safety within their departments, and they must know and understand the environment, health, and safety policy, and know and understand the guidelines and requirements of the lab safety manual. It doesn't matter if you're working in a chemistry lab or not. If you are one of these people that oversee your area that includes a lab, you should be knowledgeable in it. That's a part of your job. In addition to the responsibilities outlined within the university health and safety policy, the laboratory safety responsibilities of deans, directors, and department chairpersons, which can be delegated to other authorized personnel within the department, are, and they give me a whole list. These are the things that person should be responsible for. As a supervisor, your job is to make sure that your employees are getting supervised the right way and that they are being treated fairly and in a safe manner. Principal investigators, faculty, and lab supervisors, they might have a different role. Especially if you're a lab supervisor, you're in there all the time. Principal investigators are typically referring to anyone that's working on a grant, maybe outside money that's given to your laboratory that's working on a specific project. Well, maybe you are responsible for your area under that specific research project. Again, as I read down through, attend required health and safety training. Oh, health and safety training, what's that? I'm going to click that link. Well, it's taking its time to load, but that link would basically go to a database, and that database would be either online modules for me to complete, watch, answer questions, or maybe an actual health and safety training face-to-face meeting that I would go to make sure that I'm just kind of staying current on the information that's out there. So you get the idea, right? So I'm going to close this out. That was Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Engineering Controls. Look, perchloric acid use. So it looks to me like maybe Cornell has some laboratories that use perchloric acid. Perchloric acid is very explosive. It sets up crystals around the rim of the lid, and any type of friction, if those crystals set up, will make the bottle explode. So very often you have to have people to come in and specifically remove perchloric acid bottles just to prevent the explosion of them. But we see a section that's dedicated for that because they know that perchloric acid is on campus, and they know that that's a dangerous chemical, a hazardous chemical. So they single it out and they let me know about it. Everything about fume hoods, gloves, water protection. Chapter 3, personal protective equipment. What's the responsibilities? Chapter 4, administrative controls. Personal hygiene, eating and drinking, phones in the laboratory, Standard operating procedures. Chapter 5, emergency preparedness. What should I do if something spills? Who should I contact? First aid kits. Everything that I need to know about spill kits. Where should they be located? What type of kits should be there? All of this is major details here, right? Chapter 6, information and training. Lab safety certificate program. Chapter 7, safe chemical use. Minimize exposures. Routes of chemical entry. Chemical exposure limits. A lot of this stuff we've talked about in this module. Exposures, right? Chapter 8, chemical hazards. Chapter 9, particularly hazard substances. Remember, you can single out specific things that are really nasty and devote a whole section to them. All right, so if I click this, 9.7, select carcinogens. That causes cancer. Carcinogens, any substance or agents that's capable of causing cancer. OSHA lab standard defines a select carcinogen as any substance that meets the following. Gives me their outline. Note that the potential for carcinogens to result in cancer can also be dependent on other lifestyle factors, such as cigarette smoking, alcohol consumption, high-fat diets, geographic location, any kind of therapeutic drugs, or inherited conditions. So it gives me some guidelines for working with hazardous substances, International Agency for Research on Cancer monographs. I can find the definition of a carcinogen here. But notice that this just gives me an overview of a carcinogen. It doesn't specifically list all of them in this section. I could find that list in the respective laboratory spaces, but maybe not here in the main chemical hygiene plan. Hazardous waste disposal. Here you go. To have your hazardous waste picked up, please complete the following procedures. Gives me directions on what to do. That's great. As a new employee, I might not know what to do. This gives me directions. Tells me what I should do. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Submit it. That's as easy as it should be. If you go to a campus or if you go to an employer and you say, how do you get rid of your chemical waste? And you cannot provide them an answer, you are in violation. You should be able to know how to get rid of the stuff. That's the purpose of the chemical hygiene plan itself. You should be knowledgeable on where to find this information. And if not, then it is your employer's responsibility to provide that information to you or to give you that proper training. Okay, so as I continue on, pesticides, biohazards, radiation hazards, laser hazards, physical hazards, and it keeps going on and on and on. They've also given me some appendices all the way down. One of them, hey, peroxide forming chemicals. I'm going to click it. Safe storage periods for peroxide formers. Remember, we talked about the problem of peroxides, especially when it comes to ethers. Ethers can be very explosive if they form peroxides in the container. Open containers, chemicals in Table A, 3 months. After you open them up, you got to get rid of them. Chemicals in Table B and D, 12 months. Got to get rid of them. Uninhibited chemicals in Table C, 24 hours. Got to get rid of that one. All right, well, chemicals in Table A, I've got 3 months to get rid of them. Well, here are the ones in Table A. Table B, chemicals that form explosive level of peroxides on concentration. Diethyl ether. We use that all the time, people. Look, benzyl alcohol. We use that one in the lab. 2-butanol. We use that one in the lab. 2-hexanol. We use that one. 2-propanol. We use that one. We use quite a bit of what's in Section B. Section B, chemicals in Table B and D, we got 12 months. After 12 months, if I worked at Cornell, these need to be thrown away and dumped. And I need to order new. All right? So again, this gives me an idea of the dangers that are associated with hazardous chemicals in the laboratory that I'm working in. Glove selection. Hey, here's the glove selection guide. All the links that I need to know about gloves, the proper way to choose gloves, what I should be using based on what I'm working with. All the links are basically right there for me to figure out and to use. So this is a full-bodied chemical hygiene plan, right? It is documented, it's detailed, there's internal links on the inside of the documents, it's easily accessible, I can find the people in charge very easily, not a big deal, not a problem at all. So Cornell's got their act together. It's pretty good. Now let's compare that to Cape Fear. Here's Cape Fear's document. Let's talk about some of the issues. Number one, it says campus safety plan. It does not say chemical hygiene plan. If I Googled chemical hygiene plan, Cape Fear, I probably couldn't find any document at all. Nothing would show up. That's because under Cape Fear's plan, campus safety plan, they have included the chemical hygiene plan. That could be an issue, right? Especially if I'm working in a lab and I didn't know that's how it was listed. So, in the beginning, I would have trouble trying to find this document. That's not good. OSHA would look at this, go to a faculty member, say, find the chemical hygiene plan, couldn't find it. That's because we were typing in chemical hygiene plan and not safety plan, campus safety plan. So ideally, the chemical hygiene plan needs to be separate. It needs to be a standalone document. If they want to include it in the campus safety plan, then that's great. That's good. But ideally, the chemical hygiene plan should be removed from this section and shifted over to another standalone document. It can show up in both places if it wants to, but the chemical hygiene plan needs to be its own standalone document for people. That way, when they Google it or try to find it through the intranet or through maybe online resources on the campus, they will be able to find it without a problem. Also notice that this is a paper document. There's no interactive links. It's very difficult to maybe go through and navigate some of this, okay? Not only that, but I'm going to be looking at the entire campus safety plan, not just the laboratory safety plan, but the college as a whole. So this is great that they are including it in these, but I don't need to be concerned with bomb threats or college closures or class cancellations or emergency procedures if an accident happens on campus, as far as like someone running down the hallway and breaking a leg, injury, accident response and reporting procedures. None of this really pertains to the chemical hygiene plan, right? None of it does. But I'm going to have to go through and I'm going to have to navigate through all of this material in order to get to what I need to get to. And that's the chemical hygiene plan down here at the very bottom, pages 21 through 45. So let me go to pages 21 through 45. All right, so we're going to scroll down. We're going to keep scrolling until I get to page 21. 21's right here. There's page 21. Look at the page. Chemical hygiene plan up here at the very top. Nothing. It just starts off with words and definitions. That's it. Now, yeah, these are related to a chemical hygiene plan. I'm seeing words like pH and melting point, material safety data sheet. This was very similar to the definitions that were included in Cornell's laboratory scale, hazardous chemical. But some of this is not necessary. Specific gravity, vapor density. Should this really be included in the chemical hygiene plan? Melting point? Again, it's really concerning hazardous chemicals. And that's really it. Well, it's not titled Chemical Hygiene Plan. It told me it started on page 21. That is page 21. Here's page 22. It's a continuation of the definitions. Page 23, Cape Fear Community College Exposure Control Plan. What is going on? I thought I'm in the Chemical Hygiene Plan. And now I go to this Exposure Control Plan on page 23. This is supposed to be chemical hygiene. Remember, it's supposed to go all the way up to page 45. Well, as I scroll through here, I'm starting to see exposures, record keeping, maintenance, training records. Training records. Employee training records will include the following information related to specific education about blood-borne pathogens. Do we have training records associated with our employees for blood-borne pathogens? Well, we're probably not working with blood-borne pathogens, right? And if we are, who's actually working with it? Because this should be maybe specific to that department, not to the entire CFCC campus, right? Okay, as we go down, chemical hygiene plans, not really seeing it. It's still exposure, personal protective equipment. That's great. But take a look at the differences here, right? You get the picture. Cornell versus Cape Fear. This is a chemical hygiene plan that doesn't say chemical hygiene on it. This is a chemical hygiene plan that just basically gives me definitions that are very general. That's not specific to our laboratory spaces. Look, regulated waste. Liquid or semi-liquid blood, infectious materials, items that are caked with dry blood, pathological and microbiological waste, any item... Oh, well, I'm in a chemical lab. I thought that would be regulated waste there. But it looks like this is all stuff that's for blood. Huh. Well, that doesn't really apply to me. So I've got a question about my chemical waste. How can I go through and find our CHO rep? Wait a minute. This document's never really mentioned a chemical hygiene officer. Not yet, at least. Remember, Cornell had that link that I could click on, and it would break down. If I had to get rid of waste, these are the people. I found that in a matter of seconds. Here, though, I'm just still looking at blood. And this should be the chemical hygiene plan based on the page numbers, but it's not. And I've not really found anyone or any names or any link so that I can maybe ask some questions about this information. That's a problem. I'm still on page 37. It's not really a chemical hygiene plan yet. Training requirements. Training will be provided for employees who are at risk for occupational exposure to blood or infectious material. Oh, well, I might not really work with blood or infectious material. I'm working in a laboratory space with chemical reagents that could be hazardous, and none of this information is applied to me yet. But it told me that this is where I need to go for my chemical hygiene plan. Content of training sessions. Here's what's going to be in that training session. But again, it's really for people that are exposed to blood. But what about the hazardous waste? What about the hazardous chemicals? There's nothing. Oh, look, exposure control plan. The program coordinator is Ben Caudell, the safety committee representative in the P building, 7079. A copy of the exposure control plan is located in the following areas. It tells me where to find that. Employees are informed of the location of the safety plans. Training records are maintained by the program coordinator. That's great, but is this really exposure to everything? Or is this the exposure that it was talking about previously to the bloodborne pathogens? That it's not really clear about. Is Ben Caudell the person that I need to contact? If something happens in my laboratory, if we have hazardous waste or a hazardous exposure or a hazardous spill, Is he the person that I need to contact at the campus? It doesn't really make it clear, does it? Employees with the following departments have been identified as having a potential risk to blood or infectious body fluids. Why are we still talking about blood? This is supposed to be the chemical hygiene plan, right? What about the chemistry labs? What about the biology labs? What about maybe boat building? Maybe some food science classes that could have chemicals on site. What if they have some hazardous stuff? What about cosmetology? What if they have hazardous material? What about dental assisting? Oh, look, director and instructor of dental hygiene, that's great. And dental assisting, that's good too. But this is for potential risk to blood. What if they are using chemicals in their facility on their site that are deemed hazardous other than blood? What applies to them? I'm not finding it. There's nothing here. Hepatitis B vaccine. So this is a problem. You see the trend? You see the issue? All right, so finally, let me go up here and type in chemical hygiene. Oh, look, here's CFCC's chemical hygiene plan. That's great. 51. It starts on page 51. So it referred to me in the table of contents to a completely different section than what I wanted. That's an issue. That chemical hygiene plan is not proper. Chemical hygiene plan, section 1, standard operating procedures. Finally, we get to something that's very similar to chapter 1 here with the Cornell University, or the chapter 1 section that we talked about in the lecture module. Standard operating procedure. Okay, so now I'm feeling a little bit better. Good housekeeping, PPE, safety goggles, don't eat, smoke, or drink, selection of chemicals. Lab experiments shall be reviewed periodically to determine if alternate experiments could accomplish the same principle using less toxic or physically hazardous chemicals. All right, so now this is kind of related to me and what I need, right? Labeling and transporting chemicals. How should I store them? All of this finally is starting to make sense now. Personal hygiene, safety rules in a laboratory, right? Glassware, lab equipment. Finally, we're getting to the heart of the chemical hygiene plan. We were just looking at a different page. That's the problem. That would be a red flag if a regulatory body came in and saw this chemical hygiene plan and the way that it was written. Chemical hygiene officer. The chemical hygiene officer is listed in Appendix F. The chemical hygiene officer shall, and it gives me some of their duties. All right, so Appendix F, that's probably toward the end of the document, so I'm going to scroll toward the end. And here we go. Appendix A. Appendix A. So I'm going to scroll down, and then it just kind of stops. But it said Appendix F. So if Appendix A is the only thing that's listed in the actual appendix, where's Appendix F? Is it somewhere else? Well, let's see. Appendix F. Don't find it. Don't see a table. It keeps referring to it. Oh, look. Appendix F right here. That's on page 75. 75, and then we go to a different section. The definition of an appendix is at the end of the full body document. Well, this is not the end of the full body document. This is in the middle of the document. It might be Appendix F of this section, but if that's the case, then it shouldn't have been called Appendix F. Appendix is at the end of the document itself, not in the middle of it. So here's Appendix F. College-specific information. Designation of a chemical hygiene officer. Safety committee representative, currently Ben Caudell. Designation of a chemical hygiene committee. Committee not designated at this time. To be appointed in February 2016. I think we're past February 2016. So to be appointed in February means that it should be appointed already based on today's date. And that needs to be updated in the section, but it's not. That could be a problem. Frequency of committee meetings, not available. Designation of the environmental safety coordinator, not designated. Location of the chemical hygiene plan. It's on the intranet, and it's maintained by instructors in each chemical laboratory. Well, I got a secret for you. The intranet, can't find it there either. And maintained by instructors in each chem lab. I don't have a copy of the chemical hygiene plan. It's not in my lab. No one's given me one. No one has said, here's the chemical hygiene plan. Now put it on your bookshelf. This is where you're going to keep it. So maybe they need to revisit that. Location of 29 CFR 1910-1450, the office of the safety committee chair, and in the CFCC library. Oh, so if I go to the library, I should be able to look at the CFR, and I should be able to read the lab standard. Departments that use formaldehyde: biology, marine tech, and cosmetology. Ooh. So that means that they probably need the chemical hygiene plan as well. So do they have the chemical hygiene plan in their departments? Is it in their teaching spaces? Do their faculties know how to get a hold of this? Do their faculty members know who their safety committee representative or chemical hygiene officer is if they have questions? I hope so. All right, well, as I go through, as I work upward from this point, you're going to see a complete difference in our chemical hygiene plan versus Cornell. Okay, here we have some documentation, we have some descriptions. Nothing's very specific. Nothing is really included in the document that would be useful in a way. Well, what about waste management, right? That was something that we did see in Cornell's. Waste management, basically I was able to click a link and I was able to find how to get rid of chemicals very easily. So let's see if we can find the chemical disposal. So I keep coming through, don't really see it here. That's kind of where that document ends. So I'm going to scroll up, try to find medical surveillance, engineering controls, monitoring and measurements, exposure risk. Don't really find anything yet about how to get rid of waste. I've got a big jar of dichromate that's in the lab. I wonder who I should call to get rid of it. Hazards, special hazards, don't find anything yet. Carcinogens, still carcinogens. That's not really what I want. I want waste disposal. Do you see what I'm trying to demonstrate here? I'm trying to demonstrate me getting rid of a chemical that is hazardous. And right now, I've done this for a couple of minutes, and I've still not been able to find any information about waste disposal. Nothing is linked. Everything is very hard to find. And on Cornell, I don't even work for Cornell. I was able to find that information without a problem. Within a matter of seconds, I was able to do it. And look, we're already back up at the first part of the chemical hygiene plan. Okay, so let's say that I maybe overlooked it. Waste disposal. Waste disposal should be scheduled periodically with a licensed chemical waste vendor. Chemical waste should not be stored indefinitely. Waste disposal policy. Well, now I'll just go back to the same that I was on. Waste disposal policy. That's it. That's all I get. There's no names. Who do I call? I'm a new employee here. Who do I call to get rid of the waste? What's the company's name? What's their phone number? What's a contact name? What's an email address? I have no clue. This part of the chemical hygiene plan doesn't do me any good. That's the whole purpose of a chemical hygiene plan. Hazardous waste, how do I handle it? How do I get rid of it? Nothing is mentioned in the document. Not one thing. Again, compare that to Cornell's, and you see the drastic difference. All right, so Cape Fear's got a little bit of work to do on their chemical hygiene plan. If I scroll to the bottom of this document, revised April 2016, this is even worse. Every 6 months, this thing should be updated. And at this point, the last revision was in 2016. Not only that, it was in April. And if you remember a while ago, there was a table with Ben Caudell's name on it. And then down below, it said that a committee would be chosen February 2016. Well, if this was updated in April, February 2016, a committee should have already been formed and the names should have been listed in that table, and it wasn't. As an outside regulator, those are the things I would look for. So this needs a lot of work. This really doesn't kind of fit our need as a laboratory space or laboratory spaces across the campus. So for that reason, this could be a very general document, but maybe we as a laboratory should have our own chemical hygiene plan that's very specific to us. But who wants to do all that work? Who wants to have 14 different chemical hygiene plans when we see, as large as Cornell is, they have a pretty consistent one document that kind of includes everybody? And this is how it should be. All right, so 36 minutes into a discussion of a proper CHP, and this is where I'm going to stop. So I hate that I've depressed you, but this is a perfect example of what a good CHP would look like and what a CHP that needs work looks like. All right? But again, you don't fall under the CHP. So as a student, none of this applies to you. But if you are an employee of a college, you should be worried. This is what's getting represented out there. If you are a lab student that is doing work study, then this applies to you. You should be worried about it, right? Where's the training records? Who keeps them? Where do I dispose of the chemicals? Where's the inventory list? Who is in charge? Ben Caudell? He's a maintenance person. Does he understand everything that goes on in these lab spaces? If not, they need other points of contact in order for us to kind of represent the college extremely well. So that's all I have to say about the chemical hygiene plan. In the next video, we'll talk about just a couple of more things for some 4 or 5 minutes, and we are finished. So I hope that I've scared you up enough. I'll see you in the next one.